How's it going out there? It's February 9th. I'm Frank Curzio, the Wall Street Unplugged podcast, where I break the headlines and... tell you what's really moving these markets. Quick note right off the bat. If you do not like football or do not plan on watching the Super Bowl, you could probably skip this podcast because that's all I'm going to talk about today. For the past 13 years, which my long-term listeners know, I'm providing Super Bowl predictions on this podcast. And I used to do it a few days before the game. Why do I do this? Why do I get tons of emails asking me, Frank, you're doing a Super Bowl this year, you're doing a Super Bowl. It's because everyone makes a fortune off of my pick. It's as close to a guarantee as possible. As my record for picking the Super Bowl the past 13 years is absolutely horrible. I only picked the winner 2 times, which includes a spread. So it's been this long-standing joke that every time I break down the Super Bowl, just do the opposite of what I'm going to do. Sell your house, put everything on it, do the opposite, and you'll be absolutely rich. So I've been doing this for a very, very long time. Going to give you the data, analysis, predictions. Again, all you have to do is bet the opposite of me. You're going to win money. That's usually the way it works. Hopefully, don't bet a lot of money. You guys know that. I don't want you to go crazy in this. But, and real quick, if you're new to this, right? So I take this very seriously. I've been a football fan over 40 years. In fact, I've been watching football so long. I'm so old now, but long enough where Barry Sanders was on my fantasy football team. And people don't remember, back then you had to watch NFL primetime, Chris Berman, that's who we grew up with, to see how you guys on your fantasy team performed, because they break down the games and you're writing down on a piece of paper. There's no internet. You're writing them down on a piece of paper, all of them. You're writing down the other team that you're playing, their stats for their players. And there's no Red Zone channel, DirecTV football package, none of that. There was no internet. You only got to watch the local games, right? And then maybe they'll have another one on at 4 o'clock or whatever. But, it was like 2 games, sometimes 3 games. That was the only games you had access to. You didn't have like all these channels and craziness, right? The millennials, don't really remember that. They think that, we've been spoiled all this time. Now we're spoiled. We can watch all the games and, the different channels, different ways in streaming. And even when you did watch primetime back then, they didn't give you the stats for every player, just some of the players. So you had to wait the next day, and I was in New York, you get to like the New York Post or Daily News to look at the box scores to see if you won. You didn't know to the next day. It was so hard to see. It was kind of funny. That's how long I go back. So let's break it down with the Super Bowl. If you're watching us on a YouTube channel, I swear to you, there's no bias here. Even though I have my Eagles hat on, excited. I went to go see the Eagles Super Bowl last time they were in it. But Kansas City Chiefs are playing the Philadelphia Eagles. This is going to be no bias here, I promise you. Again, Eagles are the favorite team on the planet. And one of my 2 wins, so I said I'm 2-13. One of those 2 wins, just to let you know up front, was when I told you to bet the Eagles. And Eagles, I think, were underdog by 5, if I remember correctly. Now, it was 2018, which I had this nice bottle that one of my friends got me. This bottle of wine with celebrating the Eagles championship. I went to that Super Bowl. It was fantastic. But the Eagles actually won that game. So not only did they cover, they won that game. But that was a win for me. One of the 2. So just letting you know that right now. I'm going to pick the Eagles. Last time the Eagles were in the Super Bowl. That was then, this is now. So this game, the Eagles are favored by 1.5. Line opened up with the Chiefs favored by 1, but now it's the Eagles favored by 1.5. The under-over is about 50.5, I believe. That has been going up. It's important to understand the trends because a lot of times, most of the time, I would say more than 70% of the time when I was looking at it, the trends, meaning where they're going, where the spread's going. The Eagles spread has gone up because the Chiefs is favored. Also, the under-over has been going up. I think it was 49 and some places 51. I think it's 50.5 now. When you see that trend, it's usually, I think it's 70% of the times that trend goes in your favor. Let's see. I'm hoping that for the Eagles. I'm an Eagles fan. But the comparison between these 2 teams are pretty amazing. Listen to this. Both teams finished 16-3, which includes the playoffs. They were both number 1 seeds, so they both got buys. Both scored exactly the same points this year, 546. That's insane. Both teams averaged exactly 4.6 yards per carry in their running game. And both teams have 4 takeaways in their postseason wins. That's pretty crazy. But let's break it down team by team and try to keep up and pay attention. Again, a lot of stats, a lot of analysis, and then I'm going to give you my pick and also prop bets. By the way, my prop bets, I have a pretty good track record with my prop bets. Seriously. So that's one thing you might want to pay attention to. But the Super Bowl pick, yeah, you're probably better off doing the opposite. But here we go. Starting with the Chiefs. Everyone knows Mahomes, best quarterback in the world. Does have a high ankle sprain, which limits his mobility, which is where Mahomes usually is at his best. Scrambling out of that pocket and throwing deep and finding people. That's when he's amazing. I don't know if he's going to be able to run out of the pocket. He had 2 weeks to get better. I think he's going to be 125%. They're going to shoot him up with horse tranquilizers, given that this is the last game of the year, so I'm expecting Mahomes to be just fine. He could re-injure his ankle if he gets sacked or something like that, but I'll be surprised if he's not fully mobile, running around. Maybe just, not running as much and being a little careful, but I don't see this being a problem. Last game, you saw it. He's a great pocket passer, but still, when he's outside the pocket, that's when he's great, and he's going to need to run a little bit, especially with the Eagles' defensive pass rushers. Very good. I'll get to that in a minute. Mahomes does have a great offensive line, right? Orlando Brown, Thuney, Humphrey, Trey Smith, Andrew Wiley. These guys are great, and they're going to need to be great again, because when you're looking at Philly, one of the best defensive lines in the league, and they were great, and they were especially great against the Bengals last game. But if you're looking at the Eagles, when you have Hargrove and Fletcher Cox, which has those two names are very popular, and I would say they're ranked 4th and 5th on the team right now, behind Josh Sweat, Robert Quinn, Brandon Graham, and of course Hassan Reddick, one of the best pass rushers in the entire league. I'm glad he's getting this attention, because he didn't really get that much attention. I think they had 4 different pass rushers with 10 sacks each. Almost never happens, but you also look at TJ Edwards, is a great linebacker, but the Eagles recorded 70 sacks this season, ranked them 3rd ever. And you know who they tied? The 87 Bears. Arguably, and maybe you don't even argue, but consider the best defense in the history of the league. One of them. Okay, you could argue. A lot of people think that is the best defense. That amounts to over 4 sacks per game. Mahomes knows this. He's also one of the quickest at getting the ball out. He's one of the least sacked quarterbacks, so, that could be good for quick passes, tight end. We'll cover that in a second. But if he's not as mobile as I think, it's going to result in him throwing the ball out very, very quickly. Right? And you saw what that does what Brady did to the Seahawks when the Pats beat them in 2015. That game was also in Arizona. And yes, I lost that Super Bowl. I picked the Seahawks, which is most of the Super Bowls I lost. But I think Mahomes is going to have a really good game. He has a tendency to throw interceptions in Super Bowls. He did so in both Super Bowl appearances. Both games he did not play great. He did win the Super Bowl. He had an unbelievable fourth quarter. The first 3 quarters, he was terrible, horrible. I mean, he was just big. He was new to the game, to the Super Bowl. He didn't really play well. He definitely did not play as good as he is in the last 2 Super Bowls, which I don't know if that's going to be a factor or not. I mean, is it going to be like, hey, I'm not messing up this time, I have the experience, or is it like, is it going to put more pressure on him to actually perform? Because they really, really need him to have a great game. They need him to have a great game. It's not like they can control the ball running and stuff like that, even though, again, we'll get to the running in a second. They got a very great running back over there. I'm expecting at least 260 yards, 2 TDs. That might be a little bit below his average this year. But I just think, with this Super Bowl, we'll see. They're going to have to score running, but I think that's what kind of game he is going to have, 2 TDs. Jalen Hurts, one of the best quarterbacks in the league. An unbelievable record. He only lost 1 game this year that he started. His ability to run sets him apart from other traditional quarterbacks, because he doesn't just run. This is one of the things when I realized the Eagles are going to be good, is it'll be 3rd and 8, and he's running, and he'll get 5 yards, and he'll just dive on the ground. He doesn't get hit often. Yes, he got hurt, running, but he doesn't get hit hard often. He throws the ball away, which that is such a great play compared to throwing a stupid interception, which we saw at Carson Wentz, and we still see with him, which is sad. Always trying to make the extra play, lots of fumbles. You didn't see that. You didn't see a lot of turnovers from Hurts this year. He was very, very smart with the ball. I do think his shoulder is still hurting. He threw for less than 200 yards in his past 2 playoff games. He overthrew a couple of people. Deep pass, he's been very good with the deep pass. He's been good enough because, it didn't really matter. During those games, Giants and 49ers, the Giants, they rushed for 268 yards, 3 touchdowns. And then they rushed for 111 yards and 3 scores against the 49ers, which is even more impressive considering the 49ers defense. And they give up less than 78 yards rushing. So, the Eagles, you could say, well, they knocked out the quarterback or whatever. They still have one of the best defenses, and they ran on that defense at will, which was pretty impressive. And again, it gets easier and easier as you're running, your offense on the field more because, they had a quarterback that really couldn't throw the ball 2 feet. So your defense on the field even longer, they're going to get tired. So you're going to give up, running yards, more running yards. Anyway, With that said, Hurts has to have a good game throwing because the Chiefs corners, they don't have experience. They have one guy that is actually amazing as a rookie, and he's flipping burgers at Wendy's or whatever. Great story. These guys, sometimes when you're young, that's great because you don't realize how big the moment is, and you have so much confidence compared to sometimes being there and having that experience, right? So it makes you more nervous because you're expected to perform. These guys are not expected to do anything. You can say, well, you're a rookie, that's why you play like shit. So that might give them an edge. I don't know, but I do know that they've been beat a lot deep this year. Not so much when it came to the last game, and they played against a great wide receiving core when it comes to the Bengals. But you're looking at Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown are two of the best wide receivers in the entire league. I think it's 1 out of 6 teams that have 2,000-yard plus receivers. Just guys that could run any route, take it to the house, just unbelievable. And again, Hurts missed A.J. Brown, and he missed Devontae Smith, which they called the catch. But again, he was overthrowing a lot of passes. I don't know if it was shoulder or if he's nervous, but we'll see. Also, while Hurts had an incredible year, have one of the best quarterback ratings while not being under pressure, ranked second best, but he only ranked 12th in quarterback rating when he's under pressure. So expect the Chiefs to bring some heat. And they have one of the best defensive coordinators who's out there, who does a great job disguising blitzes. I'll break down the coaches later on. But the Eagles, when I'm looking at the Eagles, they do have an incredible offensive line. I think they have a really big advantage here. Consider the Chiefs' best pass rusher is Chris Jones, right? If Frank Clark with Chris Jones is awesome. But he's matched up against Lane Johnson, who is the best tackle in football by a mile, maybe one of the best that ever lived. I mean, the guy hasn't given up a sack in over 2 years. And just to see how good he is, Nick Bosa was named the Defensive Player of the Year. That's by Pro Football Writers America. There's like 20 people that come out that name the best player. But it's hard to argue that Bosa wasn't the Defensive Player of the Year this year. And where was he that game? He was nowhere. Okay, Lane Johnson locked him up, didn't have a sack, right? That's the best of the year. I think Bosa's much, much better than Chris Johnson. And when he's playing, he's great. And again, he's going to be shot up. He's a little injured, but he played great the last 2 games. So these guys are going to get shot up the last game of the year with painkillers or whatever. So yeah, I wouldn't really worry about injuries. I've seen Travis Kelce bend his leg backwards. I remember playing against him in fantasy football, and I was like, he's done. Oh my God, he's done. He came out, he scored 2 touchdowns, and then he wound up missing like 4 games after that. So, and I had that with my hip. I have hip replacement surgery, and they, for a year, they were giving me a needle. And I'm telling you, when they give you that, they were like, we'll give you that, the pain medicine until it no longer works. And it didn't work. And that's when I got my hip replacement. But I tell you, when they gave me that, I could run like 20 miles, like immediately. It's unbelievable. Like you don't feel anything. So when I look at that matchup, I think, with the offensive line, I think the Eagles have an advantage. The Eagles also have Kelce, Mayada, Dickerson. If they give Hurts protection, it's going to be very difficult to stop the Eagles from scoring at will, given their great running game. Also solid receivers, and also Dallas Goedert, right? One of the best tight ends in the league, but overshadowed since Kelce is the best tight end of all time, and unbelievable. But I expect Goedert to have a solid game as well. Kelce, the amount of catches for the under-over, I think, is 8.5. That's high. I mean, I was like, wow, he's definitely going to have a lot of catches. And then when I saw the 8.5, I'm like, man, I don't know if I'd bet that, though. That's a lot, especially since a lot of their wide receivers, they don't have really a great wide receiving core. Getting rid of Tyreek Hill, Hardman is not playing. So, their wide receiver core isn't the greatest, but you have Mahomes, and these guys need to get open. And let's see what happens on that front. As for Hurts, I think he's going to need to throw at least 2 TTs to win this game. That's going to open up the running game, which includes Hurts, who, by the way, could have a monster game running the ball. Since the Chiefs play more man-to-man D than anyone, and when you play man-to-man, basically, you're on your wide receiver, and you're following him everywhere. Compared to zone, you drop back, and then you're watching the quarterback, and you see everything. It's not as easy to run. You can stop the run right away. When it's man-to-man, you could run 20, 30 yards sometimes before anyone even knows that you're running. They're going to have someone as a spy or whatever, but when Hurts sees this, I mean, he's able to read the defenses right away, and that's one of the things he was really great at this season. He's beat that person who just, trails him, that one-on-one. I mean, he beats that matchup almost every time. And that could result in big plays and extra first downs for them. So we'll see. Plus the fact, again, not just making up stats here, but Chiefs give up the 5th most rushing yards to quarterbacks this year. Again, probably because they play so much man-to-man. Wide receivers, Eagles have a big edge here. Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown, I don't even think that's close. These are 2 of the best wide receivers in the game. This compares to the Chiefs with Smith-Schuster, Valdes-Scantling. Although I do like Tony. He played for the Giants and he kind of sucked and had an ankle injury or whatever. But I mean, he's explosive. I think he could have a big game. He's fast, strong, could run great routes. Remember that name in the Super Bowl, Tony, because I think he could have a really good game. I actually would bet a prop bet, which I'm going to tell you later, on him having at least one touchdown. Chiefs are ranked 31 out of 32 teams when guarding the number one wide receiver, so look for the Eagles to take some shots deep, probably right out of the gate. And if they're able to connect on that, it's going to change the whole landscape of the game because they have a great running game. If they don't connect, they get out of sync, which I've seen during the season, especially with Washington. I mean, one of the ways to beat the Eagles is control the running game, keep them off the field. Washington has done that. I've seen, who was it? I think it was the Colts they almost lost to. They should have lost that game. They didn't lose to the Colts, but Colts kept them off the field. They scored 2 late touchdowns and wound up winning that game. But keeping them off the field, that's what you need to do. It's going to be hard if you're giving up deep passes, but we'll see if that rookie defensive core does well for the Chiefs. Eagles also have one of the best run attacks in the league, right? Miles Sanders have his best year. Gainwell's also been great when given the opportunity. Just an awesome running back. He's a starting running back in most leagues. Just Miles Sanders has been that great. If they get the running game going, again, you got to be careful, Casey. We saw when the running game gets going, your defense gets tired. We saw that against the Giants. We saw that against San Francisco. I saw that again, Eagles, when they lost that game to Washington. You get the running game going. And by the way, KC is great at running the ball as well. Really, really great at running the ball. I throw out the full year stats if you're looking at them. And just look at Pacheco, who's a starting running back where he took over midseason, and this guy's been fantastic. I mean, he's a physical running back, fast runner. He pumps up the team because he carries guys on his back and stuff. I mean, this guy's like really, really great. He's pretty amazing considered he's a rookie. He was picked 251st in the 7th round of the draft. That would make me a little nervous. He could have a fumble in a game. You see that from rookies and stuff. So, because they're going to rely on him because he's that good. And then they have McKinnon. McKinnon could be massive in this game. Catching the ball in the backfield, he lit the league up for Kansas City in the past 5 games of the regular season. I know because I picked him up in fantasy, but my partner picked him up in fantasy, and we wound up winning the league, and a lot had to do with McKinnon because he was our flex option, right? So that's a third running back for all of you non-fantasy leaguers out there. And we picked him up, and he was scoring like 20 points a week. He was getting 1-2 touchdowns a game. He got over 100 yards receiving. This is a guy that's very fast out of the backfield, hard to tackle, and that could be very big, especially with quick passes, right, out of the backfield to try to protect Mahomes on that pass rush. So McKinnon could have a really, really good game. Overall, Philly and KC, they match up well. I would say the 2 major differences, or maybe 3. I mean, Kelsey's just a freak. I love it. I love that the brothers are playing because both those guys are cool and shit. But, Kelsey, you're going to have some wide receivers step up. I like what Cincy did. They said, okay, when they beat Jacksonville, and I felt like Jacksonville should play a lot better that game, but when they lost to when Jacksonville lost that game, they gave up so many passes. They were the worst in guarding tight ends, Jacksonville. But then if you look at the last game, and since they did a great job saying, okay, Kelsey, we'll let you get your numbers. That's not what Belichick does. He usually shuts down the best players. They were like, we'll let you get your numbers. And since they should have won that game, since they didn't protect the quarterback, their offensive line was hurt. It really exposed them. They weren't exposed in Buffalo, I think, because it was snowing and they really could get traction there. But they really got exposed. They got the ball back twice. From Kansas City. And they couldn't score, which is, again, I thought that since they would win that game and they didn't. So, great for KC. But 2 more major differences is the experience, right? Andy Reid, one of the best NFL coaches ever. Eagle fans know this. He's 61 years old. Former coach of the Eagles. I think he went to 4 championship games, but he never won the big game for us. He waited to go to the Chiefs to do that. And it was kind of like a mutual, when he left, it was time, right? For all coaches, it's like a time period. You don't, it's nice, you have them, and then when things aren't going so good, and they'll go for another team. It's just a good split, very respectful. But tons of experience along with Mahomes, which this is going to be his 3rd Super Bowl in 4 years. I mentioned earlier, defensive coordinator, right? Spagnuolo, he's fantastic. He disguises blitz better than anyone, and he's going to have to do that. To disguise a blitz because you see the passer rating go down significantly when he has pressure on, when Hurts has pressure on him. So you're going to see a lot of blitzes in this game. You have to see a lot of blitzes because he's ranked 2nd best quarterback when he's not getting pressured. You have to put pressure on him. It's kind of like Brady. It's kind of like Mahomes. Brady and Mahomes, the ssame thing. If you put no pressure on those guys, they will light you up tremendously. But you see when there's pressure put on Brady, what happens and how, it's a totally different game. So tons of experience there. This compares to Sirianni, who's just 41 years old, second-year head coach for the Eagles, who did lead them to the playoffs last year, but they got crushed by the Bucs. Offensive-minded coach, which you see. I mean, allowed Hurts to thrive. They have a great relationship. They're always on the same page, these guys. It's just have a lot of fun. But that experience is big, and it's going to matter, right? And challenging plays and timeouts and how they're going to use that during the game. This is really big, right? And having that experience, it's really big in this particular game, that experience. The older coach, right? This is a great stat. So experience is huge for the Super Bowl. And since 2010, the older coach has gone 9-4 in Super Bowls. Is that a good sign for the Eagles? Another major difference is the cornerbacks. And just defensive backs in general. Casey has 4 rookie defensive backs. That makes him the first team entering the Super Bowl with 4 rookie defensive backs in over 40 years. It doesn't happen because when you need to be great in that area in the Super Bowl. You can't give up big plays. That's what you don't want to do. You want to run, it's fine, but you don't want to give up play. Boom. It deflates the defense, and everyone's playing hard. One guy doesn't do his job, and it's a 60-yard pass touchdown, right? These guys have to play great. They played great last game, again, against amazing wide receiver core at Cincy. The Super Bowl is different, much bigger stage. Sometimes younger players, like I said earlier, they play great. They don't realize the stage or whatever, but also I feel like they take more chances and try to be heroes more. And if you do that, and if you pump fake, you're going to give up. You're talking about two of the best wide receivers in the entire league, these guys. So with Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown. And I'd argue that Devontae Smith might be better than A.J. Brown. And the catches, and I watch every Eagles game, the catches that this guy makes, the routes that he runs, you throw it near him, it's a catch, sidelines. He has everything. He has speed, breakaway ability. So is, A.J. Brown's amazing as well, much stronger. But man, he is unbelievable. That's an unbelievable pick. So they got to be sharp. While on the other end, you look at the Eagles, amazing defensive back. For Darius Slay, Gardner Johnson, probably would have led the league in interceptions. He was out for a couple of games, came back a couple of games ago. Bradbury, Maddox, these guys have been very, very solid throughout the whole year. Very consistent throughout the whole year. You're not seeing the Eagles getting blown out or whatever. Just very consistent, very smart. They play together, they communicate together, and have been great all year, and that's important because you can't give up the big plays, which they don't do. I think they're ranked number 1 in the league, and when in terms of giving up those big plays, defending against those plays, they defend them the best in the league. They're going to need to be at their best since Mahomes almost never takes sacks. He's going to be hard to sack, even though they have a great defense. So they need to be really, really good. We'll see if they're playing up on the receivers, which opens up the deep end. But those are 2 major things that are going to impact the game. My prediction, now here it comes. After breaking it down, the stats, the analysis, right? Sounds good, whatever, everything I'm saying. I have the Eagles winning 31-21. And here's why. When I look back at past Super Bowls, what wins Super Bowls most of the time? It's the offensive defensive lines. And the Eagles are better on both sides of that ball. Both sides of the ball. Okay? So that means you're going to control the game. Experience is huge. Mahomes, I expect to outplay Hurts. But like we saw in the last 2 games, when the Eagles bought the Giants and the 49ers, you need Hurts to be decent. Okay, if he could have 1 touchdown and 1 deep play, it's going to open up the whole entire field for them. And they really have no weaknesses on offense. Got a great tight end who's awesome and blocks. It's one thing about Kelsey. I'll say he doesn't block, but he's the best tight end ever lived. He's great. He could score 2-3 touchdowns and just amazing hands and very, very smart. Knows where to go to open. So he knows the plays. He knows exactly what Mahomes is going to do just by seeing who lines up. He's like with Gronkowski, same way. I mean, him just always on the same page is amazing. But Goddard is great. You got 2 great wide receivers. You have a great offensive line, bunch of running backs that can come in. Everything's really solid. So they're going to need to play very, very good. And we'll see. But I don't think Hurts needs to be great. He could be decent because our running game is that good with the best offensive line in football. I mean, we've seen them win the last 2 games just through running. Hurts had decent games, but he didn't have great games where he passed lights out. Their running game really dominated. If offensive line dominated, these teams, especially towards the end of the game. I hope I'm right on this one. I have to call it how it is. I have to pretend not to be an Eagles fan, or the biggest Eagles fan on the planet, that is. But for you, the bet is the Chiefs. I'm hoping that the Eagles actually win by 1 point. This way, you guys win your bet. And my Eagles take home the Super Bowl trophy. So that would be a good thing. But I have the Eagles win this game by 10. I'm not betting the Eagles. I don't bet the Eagles at all. I just don't bet on my favorite teams. I bet prop bets and things like that. But the last 2 games, if I had to bet, I just felt like the Eagles were really, really good. were much better when I looked at the whole package. And, the Chiefs are coming into this game not playing great, but they do have the experience. Again, I think they should have lost that game. The Eagles are just blowing out people. You don't know how it's going to be in a close game. You don't know how Hurts is going to be in a close game. That could be scary, and plus turnovers are a big deal. Hurts comes out and throws an interception immediately. It changed the whole complex of the game. Is he going to lose confidence? Is he not? I know Mahomes isn't going to lose confidence if he throws an interception right away. That guy's just going to throw and sling it and do whatever. He's going to have that confidence because he's been there. So, but I really believe if both of these teams play their best game, that the Eagles are more than 7 points better than them. If they both play their best games, that means nothing, right? That's on paper. We'll see what happens. But for you guys, like I said, the bet would be the Chiefs based on my track record. So sell your house, sell everything, and throw it on the Chiefs. And hopefully I'm not pissed off. I'll be happy for you guys, but I'll be pissed off if the Eagles lose. But it should be pretty cool. Let's see. I just think the Eagles are the better team. They've been the better team all year. They've only had 2 really bad games with Hurts being out. But other than that, man, they're really solid. Let's just see. Teams, when you play in a big stage, can play different. And they might just, lay an egg like the Chiefs did. The Chiefs almost lost that second Super Bowl, right? They should have lost the second Super Bowl. They played absolutely like shit for 3 quarters. They had, I think, a 3rd and 17 that Mahomes made, and then they just went on and they blew them out, winning that Super Bowl. That's the last Super Bowl that Mahomes was in. So that's my prediction. Before I go, though, let's go for a few prop bets. Again, told you, all Super Bowl today. We'll see what happens. I get the most emails when I do the Super Bowl. So a couple of ones I like, and again, I've been very good in these past years. I love Boston Scott, who's a running back for the Eagles, to get at least 1 TD. $100 bet pays you $475. I think there's a shot he can get 2 TDs in this game, which would pay you $5,000. By the way, Scott scored in both playoff games for the Eagles this year. He comes in inside the 10-yard line, usually when they're from the 5 to 10-yard line, when you're not going to see Hurts run. They have this spread out, and they give him the ball, and it looks like it's pass plays, and he usually walks the ball right into the end zone. That's how he scores his touchdowns. I think he could be very, very big in this game in terms of touchdowns, and that's a sleeper player. I like the under in passing attempts for Hurts at 32. I don't think he's going to have to throw that much. I want him to throw a little bit more. He's got to throw some deep passes, but 32 I think is a little high. I think they can be running the ball a little bit more, especially if the game is closer. I like the bet where any single player to have a 55-yard plus reception. $100 would pay you $250. I think that's going to be Devontae Smith with a 55-yard plus reception. Maybe Valdez-Scantling, maybe. But I think that we're going to see one of those from one of these guys. Both of them can throw the deep ball very, very well. Both of them going to be putting pressure on the quarterback, leaving those guys exposed. I think that you're going to see a 55-yard plus pass play, at least one of them. I like Patrick Mahomes to rush for over 18.5 yards. I think he's going to be shot up with so much pain meds that he'll be able to run a marathon on Super Bowl Sunday. I don't blame him. But yeah, because I don't think the Eagles are going to be playing that too much. I think they're going to give him the run and see if he runs. And if he runs, and they'll try to hit him or whatever. Again, they're going to go after the weaknesses and stuff like that, like every team would do. But I don't see them playing Mahomes to run, which means he's going to have open areas to run. And he did run for a little bit, last game. The last one, Kadarius Toney, Chiefs wide receiver. I like him as a crazy bet as a first Chiefs TD scorer. So he'll score the first TD for the Chiefs, not the first TD overall, first TD for the Chiefs. The difference in bet. $100 bet pays you $800. Those are my prop bets. That's my prediction. Man, I hope I'm right on my prediction. I don't care about my terrible track record for picking Super Bowls because the Eagles are in it. All bets are off. And the last time I picked the Eagles, and again, I picked it as an honest bet or whatever, but the Eagles did win the game. It was one of the last times that I won when it came to Super Bowls. So there it is. Eagles winning by 10, which probably means the Chiefs will win by 20. Let's see what happens. So guys, this is it for me. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the Super Bowl with your family, fun, commercials, enjoy it, laugh, joke around. Pretend it's not like the State of the Union speech where everyone's going to be yelling at each other and bullshit in the middle of the thing. Just no politics, no nothing. Lots of food, lots of beer. Any advice you want, make sure you have fun. It's always a great day. And man, it's going to be a lot of money to be bet at the Super Bowl. It's probably going to hit a record, and a lot of people, probably record amount of people that are going to be watching it with these teams. And one last thing I'll say is so far by the Super Bowl tickets that are being sold, 70%. It's going to be 70% likely Eagle fans, 30% for KC fans. The Eagle fans travel great. It was like 75, 80% when I went to Super Bowl, only because the Pats make the Super Bowl every year and people can't afford to go to the Super Bowl every year. So they played the Pats. There was lots of Eagle fans there. So it's going to be kind of like a home crowd for them, which they're going to need, right? They're definitely going to need as an experienced team, an experienced quarterback, an experienced coach. But they're definitely going to need that. So something which people aren't talking about, where I'm not going to say it's a home game for them, but there's definitely going to be more Eagle fans there than KC fans. So, guys, go Eagles. And hopefully, I'll see you very, very happy next week. Take care.